Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's 1 p.m. and we're going to call the July 12th meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting to order. Before we adopt the agenda, I've got a couple of procedural motions that we need to address. The first being the clerk's office has received a deputation request that was received after the deadline. So I'm going to need a mover and a seconder for the following motion: that the procedural bylaw be temporarily waived to permit the addition of a deputation request received after the deadline for Michael Bissett relating to item 6.1 on the agenda. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Warren, seconded by Mayor Elmsley. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And the next motion, we need a mover and a seconder for that the agenda for the Wednesday, July 12th, 2023 Planning Advisory Committee meeting be adopted as circulated and as amended. Member Willick, seconded by Member Barkwell. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries. Thank you. At this point, is there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Item 3 on the agenda is public meeting reports, and we have none today. We have no deputations, no correspondence. Brings us to item 6, regular and returned reports. 6.1, oh sorry, deputations. Mr. Bissett?
Good afternoon. Shall I start my deputation?
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be here just to state that I'm here representing Bromont, who is the owner of the lands, which is known as the Gateway, which is a subject of the subdivision application before you today. Just to thank staff. We've been working with staff, as council likely knows, and the committee likely knows, for many years. And we've collaboratively worked together to bring forward this application at Highway 7 in Lindsay to include a new nursing home, a range of housing options in the city, including a new public park and new street connections, and opening up some access to Sucker Creek as well, as which runs through the site where there's open space available. So we just wanted to I wanted to be available today if there were any questions on the application, and also to thank staff again as we work forward with this application to get in the ground, start building these new homes, and also, to send the message that we do want to proceed with additional applications in the near future in the area as well. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks for that. Can I get a motion to receive the deputation? Deputy Mayor Richardson, seconded by Member O'Reilly. All in favor? That carries. Committee, do you have any questions of Mr. Bissett at this time? Councillor Warren?
Through you. Thank you for coming today. I noticed that there's in the block area that there's affordable housing, and how many units would that be for affordable
Correct.
housing?
We have 2 blocks for affordable housing, which are going to the city. We have 43 units on one block, which is the block 277, and then on the southerly block, 72 units. So that adds up to 115 units, I think, 43 and 72. So it's a good number.
Great, thank you.
That's an estimate. Obviously, there would be ultimately a site plan. Those would both be subject to site plan, but that's the estimated number right now.
And just further. Yeah, and I see that you have an active transportation part to the plan. Could you just explain what those initiatives are in the plan for active transportation?
So there's a new collector street, about 26-meter right-of-way, and all the local streets would be 20-meter right-of-way. So ultimately, there would be the opportunity to provide for some sort of bike infrastructure. Also, there would be new public park and open space areas. Now, it's up to the city to determine what type of trail network may go into that. That would come at a later date. But there would be opportunity within those rights of way, certainly enough width to do whatever the city feels fit in terms of appropriate active transportation.
Thank you. And just further, was there an idea, maybe you said that it goes down to Sucker Creek, so that's all open
Yeah,
space?
so
Sorry, go ahead.
everything along Sucker Creek, so there would be a crossing of the collector street, but then there's buffers provided along Sucker Creek, and there's the park, which obviously would generally abut where Sucker Creek is, but there's also open space areas. So notwithstanding that they're not dedicated parkland, they will be dedicated to the city. And those open space areas, subject to the city's wishes, could be utilized to access, provide trails, etc. It depends on obviously the city's interest in maintaining things such as that. But that would all be open in terms of viewed and accessible in terms of enjoying that sort of Sucker Creek, which is now all in private lands east of Lindsay Street.
Just have one more, if you don't mind, through you. I know you don't have to do green housing initiatives, but I'm just wondering, I'm putting it out there. Does this subdivision have any green housing initiatives?
Yeah, in terms of like sustainability, obviously the building code has been updated to include a lot of that. I would say that we can definitely explore options for that. We're not sort of at that stage yet, but all of that would be considered going forward for sure. I will say that, from a standpoint of the project, it does include a mix of townhouses, singles, apartments. So it does have, in terms of environmental approach, some mix of housing. But in terms of like utilization of low impact development, all of that will be considered at detailed design for sure. There's options.
Yeah, I was thinking like green building standards. I know you don't have to do that, but I'm just putting that out there. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Member O'Reilly.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Michael. Michael, I realize you're going to have to do some changes to the infrastructure, and I understand that the nursing home is one of the projects and maybe it's going to go in early. When would you, if it was approved today, when would you hope to start improving, or what you have to do to the infrastructure?
We were just talking about that today. I'd like to get a meeting right away to start immediately with pre-servicing agreements and bringing that infrastructure down. Certainly, I know the owner, Severio, you all likely know very well, is keen to get started as soon as possible. I think that their agreements with the nursing home are set now, and they're looking to proceed immediately. So I would suggest that they would like to get something going this year, if at all possible, and then get that moving. I can't tell you exact timeframes until I sort of confirm that with engineering staff.
Thank you.
Mayor Elmsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Thank you for coming today. I just have a couple of questions. On the institutional nursing home block and the two medium-density residential units, can you tell me how many stories you anticipate those being?
Yeah, the nursing home block, I believe it's going to be approximately 2 to 4 stories. I don't think we have a site plan yet. That would obviously be subject to site plan, but it'd be low rise. I understand that the city would be commencing with the affordable housing apartments on the other 2 blocks. And I understand from staff that those would likely be 2 stories. but that's subject to site plan as well. So those blocks would each be subject to site plan approval. But those will be coming in to probably pretty soon to staff for review. We'll have to consider those detailed plans once we get the subdivision set.
My concern was
But they'd be
that-
low rise. Yeah.
Yeah, my concern was that if they were higher buildings, if there was a problem with shadowing or overlooking.
Oh, no. Yeah, these are
yards.
going to be low rise buildings generally.
Deputy Mayor
And if
Richardson?
anything, you'd get a maximum, even of up to 6 stories. You wouldn't have shadows that would impact anything.
Thank you, and through you. Yes, again, thanks for coming. Just to go back to that nursing home component, I know there has been, word on the street about how many actual rooms or apartments that will be in there. Do you have that type of figure right now?
We just have, right now, we don't have the site plan ready, but I would say we're anticipating potentially over 150. I think there's potential for that. It all depends on the ultimate size, obviously. So there would be a good number of beds. Obviously, the rooms would be, given this is a nursing home, they don't have all of kitchen and bathroom facilities in each room because it's actually an institutional use. So you do have an opportunity for more rooms because of the size. But that's sort of an assumption we had just used for traffic for conservative. It could be less, could be a little more, but it's somewhere over 150, I think. We'll have more detail on that when we come in with the site plan for sure.
Okay. Councillor Warren?
Just on that, so you have had the approval from the province for these beds? Because
We have a traffic study that was undertaken by the MTO in terms of traffic capacity as it relates to Highway 7, and there were assumptions, embedded within that traffic study. I would say that approval for the nursing home from the province also obviously was provided through the minister's zoning order, which allowed the use.
So it's definitely a nursing home and not a nursing or a retirement residence?
Exactly. It's an institutional nursing home
Okay.
use, not like seniors condominium, for instance.
Thank you.
Is there any further questions at this time? Okay, thanks for that, Mr. Bissett. We'll move into regular and returned reports. Item 6.1, Plan 2023-037, an application to permit a mixed-use residential, commercial, and institutional plan of subdivision at Lindsay Street South and Highway 7, Lindsay, Bromont Homes. Director Hawley.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back again. Just wanted to provide an overview of this application. It is a mixed-use plan of subdivision. It's located down on the at the northeast corner of Lindsay Street South and Highway 7. We received an application late last year for a revised draft plan of subdivision. Previous application that had been submitted by Bromont Homes was primarily commercial and industrial related. So this is a change in philosophy for them to go to a largely residential plan with 2 commercial blocks and an institutional block as well. The development would have approximately 248, just under 250 single detached dwellings, 148 townhouse units, 3 medium density blocks, 2 of which would be coming to the city in accordance with the framework agreement that the city has entered into with Bromont Homes as well. When I say Bromont Homes, I mean that as sort of a company head. There are a number of different properties in there owned by different Bromont companies. So I just use that as sort of an overall catch for this. There are also going to be 2 commercial blocks. The 2 commercial blocks are at the foot of Street A and Highway 7. So I believe one of them is going to be a gas station, so it's essentially convenience retail that's going to serve the subdivision primarily, as well as, perhaps the traveling public. Basically, because it's a right-in, right-out subdivision, it's not a full-turn subdivision a full-turn entrance on Highway 7. It's likely going to primarily serve the subdivision, perhaps any westbound traffic. We are also getting a stormwater management block, Block 283, which is up in the central part of the subdivision. We are getting Block 282, which is a park block just north of Sucker Creek. And we're getting a number of open space blocks as well. As you'll see, Sucker Creek sort of traverses the site sort of in an east-west pattern and along Street A, and then Street A traverses over top of Sucker Creek as well. There is also a block for a pumping station, which is located right beside the institutional nursing home block. So that's going to provide sanitary pumping facilities for the entire subdivision as well. Again, the application was submitted December 22nd of last year and deemed complete January 26th of this year. The application was circulated to all agencies for comments. Given the changes under Bill 23, public meetings are no longer required for draft plans of subdivision, as this is primarily viewed as an implementation exercise. The developer had received a minister's zoning order back in, I believe, 2021. It's OREG 40-22, and 22, and that essentially set the zoning for the property. Minister's zoning orders essentially work. They basically draw a box around the property, and there is no zoning like you have typical zoning under Section 34 that we would provide you with. It's basically a box, and then there is a whole list of uses and regulations, and then it's up to this, the city and the developer how you want to organize the site. So essentially what's happening here is the subdivision basically organizes the site. It draws from the uses and the regulations in the minister's zoning order, and then says, okay, well, you've got a block here, and you go through the minister's zoning order and you say, okay, fine, these are the uses that you can have on that block because that's what makes sense and that's what fits from a setback perspective. So it's a little different than your typical Section 34 zoning bylaw. This property, based on the recent OLT decision, this property is also now in the urban area. Hence, we can consider this project from a servicing perspective. That just happened, I believe, late last year that it was brought into the urban settlement area. So we can now consider this project from a development perspective. I believe we've sort of gone through the draft plan of subdivision. There are quite a few townhouse blocks. There's sort of street townhouses that back onto Lindsay Street South. We've also asked for a 1-foot reserve along there just so that people can't back out of their backyards directly onto Lindsay Street South. There is a medium density block at the corner of Street A and Lindsay Street South as well. That will be retained by the developer, and they will develop that in accordance with how they want to develop that block as well. Again, the singles are sort of primarily in behind there. The singles are also, there's a lot of singles on the south part of the block as well as street townhouse blocks abutting sort of the nursing home as well as the city's medium density blocks as well. MZOs do not have to conform to provincial policy. However, we typically ask for some kind of a conformity exercise. Essentially, the way the site is organized, it meets all of the provincial policy tests, so both under the growth plan and under the provincial policy statement. So they provide a mixture of houses, a mix of uses, and they provide sort of complete communities. This proposal has a wide variety of housing options in it. Singles, townhouses, and medium density blocks, and the city is getting 2 blocks, so there will be quite a few different housing options within this development. The nursing home as well provides another option for city residents, sort of at the end of their life term. So this proposal does have quite a few housing options. We've also asked the developer, as we asked Tribute, to see whether or not they can provide some models that have ARU options, so accessory residential units, that someone can say, well, you know what, I don't want to have my basement, I want to put essentially a basement apartment in there, and it can be it'll then come with the house, it'll all come done in accordance with the building code, and that truly, in our view, provides another affordability option for people that helps to pay the mortgage, or it helps to, provides a rental option for someone, or it provides an option for someone to have their kids live with them or their parents live with them. So from that perspective, we have asked the question. I believe the developer has gone away to take a look at it. Further, from a policy perspective, it meets the greenfield density requirements of 40 residents and jobs per hectare. It addresses all of the safety requirements under the PPS, and as well as addressing natural heritage issues. The natural heritage issues are primarily along Sucker Creek. Part of this area is within the intake protection zone 2 for Lindsay. So there is some work that KRCA is starting to do in terms of updating the mapping. So they're going to go through that study process to update the mapping so that the development can proceed. And my understanding is KRCA is starting immediately with that work, because there is a bit of a there is a bit of a time lag because you need to get MECP approval for that. So that work is going to be starting. The developer has provided quite a few background studies to deal with the environmental piece as well, along Sucker Creek, as well as reports that deal with the stormwater management pond. So there is a stormwater management facility that's being constructed just on the sort of the north central part of the site. And that is still subject to sort of a final, more detailed design. But all of that should work out through the detailed design. There's also been an arborist report prepared. This was a requirement in the framework agreement that was signed with Bromont Homes. So to try to preserve as many trees as possible, and for the trees that can't be preserved, that they would have to end up paying the city to take them down. That report is still being finalized. They'll try to preserve as many trees as they can in the areas that they can, but the assessment did indicate that quite a few of the trees were either in poor health or they weren't tree species that you would typically want to save. Anyways, a lot of Manitoba maple in there. So that's something that will just be coming down, and we're only going to charge them for good, healthy trees that they destroy. From an official plan perspective, this meets the intent of our official plan policies for urban development. Again, all of the things that are hit in provincial policy, it hits in our official plan as well. The minister's zoning order, again, it was Ontario Regulation 44-22 was approved by the minister on January 28th of last year. And that is the instrument that we're going to be using to approve all of the development once they come in for building permits or for site plan control as well. I think the discussion that we had with that members had with Mr. Bessette touched along a number of the issues that I've sort of outlined in my report. Obviously, active transportation is a fairly big one. We are going to make provisions for sidewalks, and that's going to be done through the detailed design with engineering. Obviously, there's going to be sidewalks where possible, and we'll have to take a look and see whether we can accommodate bike lanes on those roadways. We're also going to be looking as part of the detailed design for any upgrades on Lindsay Street South to see if we can accommodate a multi-purpose path on the east side, which would connect this subdivision up to Logie Street. Then people could bike onto Logie Street and access all the parks that have been constructed on there. And then from there, they can access through other parts of Lindsay. So that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at through the design of the Lindsay Street upgrades and urbanization. Obviously, we've had some discussions already as late as yesterday. There are going to be some minor red line changes to the draft plan as we start to implement things. If they are very minor and they're related to implementation, they don't need to come back to this committee for approval. The Director of Development Services has the ability to issue minor amendments or red line revisions if we even need to. If it's just something that is very minor, we deem it to be an implementation matter and we just move ahead. Again, natural features. The development has provided a number of buffers along Sucker Creek, as well as providing a park on the north end. There's some open space there that's done in association with the stormwater management pond. A point of distinction, and I will bring this forward on behalf of Community Services, it's only the park block that's going to be used for park purposes, and whatever parkland features they're going to be putting on it. The open space lands aren't necessarily going to be considered as parklands. We'll have to see what we do with those lands. Do we let them naturalize? Do we put any trails through? But that's something that's going to be an operational determination by Community Services once those blocks get transferred to us. There aren't any designs right now to sort of do anything with that open space block beside the stormwater pond either at this point in time. Traffic impact study. Traffic, as you know, traffic has been a big issue with this subdivision. Traffic study was provided to it from the developer to the city and MTO. It has received a review. Essentially, there will be only a right-in, right-out at Street A and Highway 7. The ministry does not want a full movement intersection or fully signalized intersection. The fully signalized intersection will be on Lindsay Street South at Street A. So the final determination of the road configuration on Street A, so how long is, how many turning lanes are we going to have going northbound and southbound, that will be determined through the detailed design. So then that pavement width gets determined, and then the signalization is going to be constructed based on excuse me, based on when that signalization has to be constructed based on the need that's going to be demonstrated by a traffic study. Another issue that came up was the 14-meter setback from the Ministry of Transportation. If you look closely, you'll see a block between the commercial block and the medium density block. So that is a block that is going to come to the city, but we cannot have the roadway located within that block. So the Ministry of Transportation has a policy of 14-meter setback, which means they protect those lands for future road widening needs. You can't have any infrastructure within that area that can't be either moved or removed entirely. From a zoning perspective, you can't have parking or loading or buildings within that area that are required under the from a zoning perspective. So you have to, that 14-meter area has to essentially be free or open. You can put parking in there if it's excess, but that's about it. So we had to move, the developer had to move that street north, so Street D and Street B north. And you'll see the 14 meters also impacts the city block, block 278. So they had to widen that block to give the city the extra land that we're going to lose to the 14-meter setback. So a lot of negotiations back and forth, but the developer did accommodate the MTO requirements. Obviously, I believe we sort of touched on phasing as well. The Bromont Homes has a preliminary phasing plan, looking to do this in 2 phases. So we'll see whether that is going to be the plan going forward, or whether that gets modified somewhat depending on the need to perhaps break out the institutional nursing home block, perhaps in a separate phase. So those discussions are going to be ongoing, and we'll work with Bromont Homes to make that happen. Obviously, every phase has its own subdivision plan, and it has its own subdivision agreement. So I can see at least 2 subdivision agreements happening. If there's more phases, then each phase will get its own subdivision agreement as well. Obviously, the application was circulated to all the different agencies. The main commenters were City's Engineering Department, Kawartha Region Conservation, Ministry of Transportation. We did get some comments from Building and Fire, but generally there's not that many more agencies that commented. All of the comments have been dealt with on a functional basis. Obviously, there is some detailed design that's needed, and obviously a lot of that is going to rest with the city through the subdivision agreement process, and as well as through the detailed engineering design, which Ms. Sisson is going to be quarterbacking on behalf of the engineering department. So that's sort of the typical process. There's a long list of conditions of draft plan approval that are attached here, very similar to what you approved with Tribute a couple of weeks ago as well. I think on that basis, I think we've worked really well. We've had, again, as with Tribute, we had a huge series of meetings with the developer, with all the agencies, and it was a very good collaborative sort of working relationship with them. So I also want to thank the developer for their efforts in dealing with all the issues. And on that basis, I would respectfully recommend that this be referred to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Director Hawley. Questions, Mayor Helmsley?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm assuming it probably gets handled at site plan. I was wondering, obviously the institutional nursing home would have consideration for accessibility issues. I was wondering about the medium density residential or any of the other builds, whether there has been consideration for accessibility components.
Through the chair to the mayor, yes, there will be accessibility will be dealt with at the site plan approval stage. So all three medium density residential blocks, the institutional block as well as the commercial blocks, will be going through site plan control. We do look at accessibility through that process. So, proximity of the accessible parking to the front entrance, making sure that everything is wide enough, that there's enough accessible parking there, that there is a barrier-free travel path to the front entrance. Obviously, the site plan approval process doesn't touch the inside of the building. That's building code, but we will definitely look at all accessibility aspects through site plan outside of the building.
Councillor Warren?
Yeah, through you, just a question. With our block of open space, is that heavily treed? I can't visualize it, so I was just wondering, along the shoreline.
It's a good question. I think it's partially treed, but I don't think it's heavily treed. I think there are some trees sort of at the top of bank, more or less, but I don't think the interior is that heavily treed.
Deputy Mayor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just looking for, it says the developer anticipates the development to be registered in the 2 phases. Do you have any kind of timeline associated with that? Just, it seems to be the $1 million question out there with everybody is when, right? So I'm just, one of those questions.
Through the chair to the deputy mayor. Obviously, that's going to depend really on how quickly they get through pre-servicing, and it's also going to depend on, to some extent, how quickly we're able to get through the approval phase, the design and the approval phase, and the construction phase of bringing the services down to the site as well. I don't really have a good handle on that timeline, and I don't want to put Ms. Sisson on the spot, but I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere. I mean, obviously the design process is going to take its time. It has to get approved by the ministry. So I would think that sometime next year, hopefully, they'll be able to start construction, or will be able to start construction of those infrastructure works. It's also going to depend on, to some extent, obviously, the developer wants to pre-service the site as quickly as they can, and they have that right as well. I would guess that they're probably going to be coming in for pre-servicing. I don't know if August is too soon, but certainly early fall, and then have that approved so that they can start pre-servicing. I think probably, hopefully, still later this fall. I would guess. But obviously, it's probably a better question for Mr. Bessette. But obviously, I mean, I could see development happening on this site if everything aligns, maybe later next year. That's I'd say that's my best guess to answer the question.
And that's a fair enough answer. Just, it seems to come up a lot, so I know it's ballparking, but thank you.
Patience is a virtue. Member O'Reilly?
I just want to congratulate and say thanks to Richard, you and your staff, for the work you've done in bringing this forward. This plan's been around on the other side of Lindsay. Mason was going to get going, and now we see the houses being built out there, and now with this and all the work you people put in with Severo and his staff. I just think this is an exciting day. I realize that we just make recommendations that's going to go to council yet, but I just think to finally see something underway out there in the not too distant future is an exciting day for our community.
Any further questions of Director Hawley? If there's not, you've got a recommendation. What would the committee's wishes be? Mayor Elmsley?
I'll move at the recommendation as printed.
So moved by Mayor Elmsley that report plan 2023-037 Bromont Homes proposed mixed-use plan of subdivision be received, that the draft plan of subdivision 16T-23501 as shown on Appendix B and the conditions of draft plan approval substantially in the form attached as Appendix C to Report Plan 2023-037 be referred to council for approval and adoption, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents required by the approval of the applications. Seconded by Councillor Warren. Any discussion? All in favor? That carries. Thank you. That brings us down to our last item on today's agenda. Somebody like to make a motion to adjourn? Member Barkwell, seconded by Member O'Reilly. All in favor? That carries.